Before 48 people, with the clinking of wine glasses and the smoky scent of barbecue hanging in the air, my mother stood, raised her glass, and aimed a proud, radiant smile at my younger sister. This is the daughter who has always loved her family. Then her eyes shifted to me. It wasn't an angry look, not even a bitter one. It was just a brief glance, a slight, almost polite smile. And that one? She's never done a thing to help. Nobody said a word. There was no nervous laughter, no shifting in seats, no disagreeing glance, just the sound of ice cubes rattling in glasses and the hard swallow I took as I stood there, fighting to keep my hands from trembling. Welcome to Family Ashes, the place where the secrets families bury are dug up and set ablaze, and where the people you thought were your own are often the first to strike the match. If you discovered one day that your own family had quietly written you out of their history after all the years you'd sacrificed, carried, and endured for them, what would you do? Would you keep quiet just to keep the peace at the dinner table? Or would you finally stand up, walk out, and never look back? Leave a comment if you've ever felt like that. Like the video if any part of this story feels uncomfortably familiar. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the raw, unfiltered stories of what people still have the audacity to call family. My name is Rebecca Thorne. I'm 37 years old. I live by myself in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle, Washington. The place isn't grand, but it's quiet enough that the sound of my coffee maker is the only thing that wakes me. And it's private enough that no one has any idea who I'm supporting or what burdens I'm carrying. I work as an auditor for a respectable financial firm. It's not a glamorous job, not the kind that makes for interesting stories at parties, but it pays the bills. It allows me to live, to save, and for the last 10 years, to take care of an entire family I haven't lived with for over a decade. For 10 years, I silently covered it all. The mortgage on my parents' aging house in Bellevue, the electricity and water bills, the medical expenses when my father injured his back working in the garden 2 years ago, and even the tuition for Maya, my younger sister, when she decided she needed to find herself by enrolling in an artisanal pottery course after abandoning her life coach certification. No one ever asked for the help directly, and they certainly never refused it. They just received. And I, for reasons I had long stopped trying to understand myself, just kept sending the money, month after month, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Maya is 4 years my junior. She has that wavy, dark hair and a soft, gentle voice that makes people feel at ease. She's what you'd call a free spirit. She's dabbled in a bit of everything, yoga, acting, and then she moved back in with our parents to try and start an online store for her pottery from their garage. At one point, she was painting abstract watercolors to sell on Etsy, but mostly, she gets by on positive affirmations, handmade jewelry, and a firm belief that if you just send enough love out into the universe, everything will fall into place. I don't resent Maya. Truly, I don't. I just used to think that everyone in a family was supposed to do their part to keep the ship afloat, but it turns out some roles are far more glamorous than others. And some people like me, aren't remembered for what they did, but for what they didn't do, like failing to appear in a family photo collage. The lodge was nestled on the shore of Lake Chelan, surrounded by towering pines that soaked up the summer sun. The family had used it years ago for a cousin's wedding and a few other mandatory let's get together and pretend we all get along reunions. This year, it was chosen again. Nearly 50 people showed up, a flock of relatives from all over. Some had driven for 10 hours from Oregon. Some brought their dogs, their tents, and even their own portable fans. The adults were busy preparing food while the kids ran around, kicking empty soda cans. A Bluetooth speaker blasted country music across the lawn. Long tables were draped with red and white checkered cloths, and a massive bowl of potato salad sat untouched after the first few brave souls sampled it. I was a little late, about 15 minutes past the official start time. It wasn't because of traffic or because I'd forgotten. I just found myself sitting in my car a little longer than I needed to, hesitating, staring at the hand-painted wooden sign that read, "Welcome Thorne Family." I saw my name there, generic and invisible, and I had a fleeting thought. Maybe this year will be different. Maybe this time they'll greet me like I'm actually part of the group, not just their walking, talking bank account. I'd brought an envelope with me. Inside was a gift certificate for dinner at Il Nido, an upscale Italian restaurant in the heart of Seattle. It was the kind of place my parents would always point to when we drove past and say, "One day we'll go there." But they never made a reservation. Sometimes it was too expensive. Other times, Maya had a scheduling conflict. I had booked the table 3 weeks in advance, requesting a spot by the window with a view of the garden, and I'd even asked the restaurant to place a small vase of freesias on the table, my mom's favorite. The gift wasn't over the top or flashy, but I thought, just maybe, for once, it would make them genuinely happy. I saw Maya from across the lawn almost immediately. She was wearing a flowing white sundress, her hair down, smiling at everyone as if she'd just stepped out of an ad for organic living. She was holding a gift wrapped in shimmering gold paper, tied with a perfect silk ribbon. I didn't think much of it. Maya always brought a gift. Maya always knew how to make an entrance at the perfect moment, how to laugh at just the right decibel, how to give a hug that was just long enough to convince people that everything was going to be fine. I quietly slid my own envelope under my parents' dinner plates. No announcement, no fanfare, just like I'd done everything else for the past 10 years. By dinner time, they brought out the food, barbecue chicken, grilled corn, baked beans, and that sweet cornbread I always found a little too dry. The air filled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the rambling stories of half-drunk uncles. For a moment, I started to think I had been wrong to be so anxious. Maybe this time it really would be okay. Then Maya stood up. Someone handed her a microphone. I don't know who did it or why, but the way she took it, as if her hand was made for that moment, told me everything I needed to know. She smiled that gentle smile of hers. "I wasn't planning on saying anything," she began, her voice soft and steady, the kind you hear in guided meditation videos. "But I have a little something for Mom and Dad." She unwrapped the paper and I saw the frame. It was a photo collage, a collection of carefully selected images. A birthday celebration at the beach, Christmas morning in the living room, a candid shot on the balcony at home. My parents and Maya were in every single one, all smiling, arms wrapped around each other. I wasn't in any of them, not in the middle, not on the edge. I wasn't even cropped out of a corner. I was just gone. My mother took the frame with both hands as if she were holding a sacred artifact. She stared at it for a long, silent moment. Then she stood up, raised her glass to chest level, her voice clear and brimming with emotion. "This is the daughter who has always loved her family." The table erupted in applause. There were a few scattered ahs. I sat perfectly still, watching my own hands ball into tight fists in my lap. Then my mother turned to me. Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was just calm, almost serene. "And that one? She's never done a thing to help." I don't remember what anyone said right after that. I think someone dropped a fork. Someone else cleared their throat. But no one spoke up. No one asked for clarification. No one looked at her with confusion. It was just me, sitting there, feeling a deep, unshakable cold in the middle of a warm July evening. I stood up. I didn't slam my hands on the table. I didn't throw my glass of wine. I didn't make a dramatic exit. I just stood, the way you do when you're leaving a dinner you were never truly invited to in the first place. My chair made a soft scraping sound as I pushed it back, just enough to make a few people glance in my direction. But no one tried to stop me. No one called out my name. No eyes widened with concern or regret. It was as if they had all been waiting for this exact moment, the moment I would quietly remove myself so they could all get back to the easier version of the evening, the one where they didn't have to acknowledge I had ever been there at all. I walked past the rows of folding tables, past the trays of food that were now growing cold, past the laughter of relatives who probably couldn't even remember what elementary school I went to. I walked past my sister, her head bowed in a performance of mock embarrassment, her hand still resting on our mother's shoulder like a stamp of approval. I didn't look at them, not because I was seething with rage, but because I knew if I turned around, all I would see was my own face reflected in their eyes as something inconvenient, something unnecessary. And I was just too tired to keep pretending I belonged there. My car was parked at the edge of the woods, under a canopy of dry pine trees. I opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, but I didn't start the engine right away. I just rested my hands on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the distant glow of the yellow string lights, tiny twinkling dots in a picture I was never meant to be a part of. I sat there for 5 minutes, then 10. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just let myself be still as if I was trying to teach my body a new rule. From this moment forward, we are not going back. On the long drive back to Seattle, I didn't turn on the radio. No podcasts, no music, nothing. I let the monotonous hum of the engine be the only sound that filled the car. And in that heavy silence, the numbers started to swim in my head like a never-ending spreadsheet, not on a client's monitor, but in my own memory. $1,150 per month for the mortgage, starting from when my dad was laid off in 2013 until he found a part-time job at the local community center. $150 here and there every time Maya needed a small loan to cover the fees for her pottery class or to buy new supplies to relaunch her Etsy shop. $4,200 for my mom's dental surgery that their insurance wouldn't cover because she'd let the policy lapse. $200 a month for the gas card, which was in my name, so they could fill up their 2 cars. Some months it was the car insurance. Other times it was the roof repair after a big storm. Once Maya had called me sobbing because an unpaid tuition bill was preventing her from registering for the next semester. I wired the money in less than 10 minutes. When I started adding it all up, the big recurring expenses and the small forgotten ones, the total climbed past $152,000, all of it silent, all of it invisible. There was never a single official thank you. Not one card, not one person ever said, "You're the one who kept this family from sinking." When I got back to my apartment, I didn't bother turning on the lights. I kicked off my shoes, walked straight to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and just stood there for a long time, my hand resting on the cool granite countertop as if it were the only solid thing in the world. I thought I would feel angry. I expected a sharp sting of betrayal, or maybe shame, or even deep disappointment. But I didn't. I just felt done. It was like someone had pulled a plug out of the wall and everything, including my emotions, had just shut down. I went into my living room and opened my laptop. I didn't log on to write a furious email. I just logged into my bank accounts one by one. I stopped the automatic monthly transfer for my parents' mortgage. I canceled the secondary credit card my mom used for her little emergencies. I closed the utility account that was under my name but for their address, the one I had been quietly paying for 8 years because they must have forgotten to switch it over. I revoked Maya's access to the shared Amazon account she used for her business supplies. I canceled the gas card. I changed the password to the email that held all my financial logins, the one my mom had borrowed the password for years ago and never logged out of. Everything clean, final. There was no hesitation. There were no dramatic announcements. I didn't do it to be spiteful. I didn't want them to suffer. I did it because I finally understood, with crystal clarity, that if I could be so effortlessly written out of their story, then I had no obligation to keep funding a role I no longer played. I had no reason to keep the machine running if I had already been removed from the list of A-list contributors. I never wanted a parade. I never asked for a trophy. I just wanted to be acknowledged, that I was there, that I existed. that if anyone had kept that roof from caving in, the absolute least they could do was not declare in public that I'd never been there at all. That night, I took a longer shower than usual. Not because I was dirty, but because it was the first time in 10 years I didn't feel a constant nagging urge to check my phone to see if someone was asking if the money had gone through. I got into bed, set my alarm for 2 hours later than my usual time, and I slept. No tossing and turning, no stress dreams, no waking up in a cold sweat, panicking that I'd missed a payment. I slept like someone who, for the first time in a very long time, was only responsible for herself. And the strangest part? I didn't feel 1 ounce of guilt. The next morning, I woke up later than I had in a decade. I looked at my phone. 38 missed calls. From my mother, my father, my sister. The panic had begun. Around noon, my doorbell rang. Not an urgent, frantic ringing, but one long, sustained chime, as if the person on the other side knew exactly what they were waiting for and felt entitled to it. I didn't rush to the door. I stayed where I was, holding a glass of water, and peered through the small curtain by my kitchen window. It was an overcast, gray Seattle day, but the two silhouettes on my porch were unmistakable. My mom, in her light beige cardigan she always wore when she wanted to appear fragile and deserving of sympathy. Her hair was down and her flats were worn at the heel. My dad stood a step behind her, hands shoved in his pockets, his shoulders slumped. Looking at them from the safety of my own home, I didn't feel a surge of anger. I just felt distance. It was as if the two people who had raised me, who had called me their daughter for over 30 years, were now strangers standing on a stranger's porch, asking for entry. I went to the door and opened it. I didn't use the chain lock, but I didn't unlatch the screen door either. We just stood there, separated by a thin mesh screen, me on the inside, them on the outside. "Can we talk for a minute?" My mother started, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. There was a flicker of genuine worry in her eyes, the look of someone who wasn't sure if a door was about to be slammed in her face. "I just want to clear up a misunderstanding." I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed. "We can talk right here." I didn't invite them in, not to be cruel, but because I couldn't let them set foot in the one place that was my sanctuary, my refuge from the endless demands, the late-night calls, the emails marked urgent. This was the space I had built for myself, and they had forfeited their right to enter it the moment my mother raised her glass and erased me from the family narrative. My mother glanced around, that hesitant posture I knew so well, the one she adopted right before delivering an apology that wasn't really an apology. "About what happened at the reunion," she said, taking a quiet breath. "I didn't mean for it to come out that way. It's just, everyone was watching, and Maya had just given us that beautiful frame, and I got emotional. I just misspoke." I didn't smile or scoff. I just nodded like an auditor reviewing a flawed report. "Misspoke," I repeated, my voice flat, in front of 48 people. For the first time, my father spoke. "We didn't think you would react like this." I turned my gaze to him. So, my silence would have been better, right? As long as I kept my mouth shut and the money kept coming, as long as the bills were paid and the loans were covered, it didn't matter if I was publicly disowned. No one had an answer for that. I stood up straight and pulled my phone out of my pocket. I opened the Notes app where I had typed out every single expense I could remember at 2 a.m. after I got home. I didn't show them the screen. I just started reading. $98,400 for the mortgage, $24,200 for utilities, $13,500 for medical bills, including 2 ER visits for Dad's back, $6,300 for Maya's pottery classes, her life coach certification, and her small business startup costs, $4,800 for car repairs and gas cards, and over $5,000 in miscellaneous expenses I can't even categorize anymore. Total, over 10 years, $152,000. I let the numbers hang in the air between us, cold and hard. My mother looked down at the welcome mat. My father glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I knew they remembered. Not every dollar, but they remembered the feeling of security, the knowledge that whenever they were in a bind, I would be there to say yes. And after all of that, I continued, my voice steady, you stood up, raised your glass, and told our entire family that I had never helped, and not a single person looked surprised, which tells me, to all of you, that statement sounded true. I didn't need an explanation. I didn't need to hear about being caught up in the moment. They had made a choice. They chose to stand with the applause for the pretty picture frame. Finally, I said, not with anger, but with finality. If everything I've done for 10 years isn't enough to be considered part of this family, then from now on, I will stop paying for a role that doesn't exist. This isn't a punishment. It's just clarity. I closed the main door, slowly. Not slamming it, but with a quiet click that felt more final than any shout ever could. I was wiping down the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang again a few days later. This time it wasn't a long, entitled chime. It was 2 short, firm rings, a summons. I dried my hands on a towel and took my time. A quick glance out the side window confirmed my suspicion. Maya. She had a canvas tote bag slung over her shoulder and was wearing a wrinkled t-shirt. Her face was tense. This wasn't the serene, healing energy Maya. This was someone who had just been thrown off the gravy train. I opened the door, and before I could say a word, she pushed past me and walked right in, as if she still owned the place. But this wasn't the home she grew up in. This wasn't the kitchen where I used to make her chamomile tea to calm her anxiety. This was my space, paid for with my salary, my overtime, and my exhaustion. And for the first time, I stood in the middle of it and didn't move aside for her. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" she asked, her voice louder than usual. "You're not answering texts. You're not picking up calls." Mom and Dad are in a full-blown panic. The mortgage payment bounced. The credit cards were declined. They're freaking out. I just stood there, listening. I was so used to this dynamic, someone else's chaos arriving on my doorstep, with the expectation that I would clean it up. "I had to work a double shift at the cafe yesterday," she said, her tone dripping with accusation, as if the fact that she had to earn her own money was a personal betrayal. "They've depended on you for years, Rebecca. You can't just cut them off. What is wrong with you?" I calmly sat down in a nearby chair, crossing my arms. "They chose this," I said simply. Maya's brow furrowed in confusion, or maybe just a willful refusal to understand. "Chose what?" "They chose you," I said, my voice slow and deliberate, "right there, in front of everyone." Mom raised her glass, looked at you like you were a saint, then turned to me and said I'd never helped, and you didn't say a word. You didn't correct her. She shook her head. I was shocked. I didn't think she would say that. But you smiled, I cut in. You did that shy little head bow. You soaked up the praise like it was yours to take. You let me sit there like a stranger at my own family's table. And then you watched me walk away and didn't even send a text. The air grew thick and heavy. Maya turned her face away, and I couldn't tell if it was from shame or if she was just gathering her thoughts for another attack. "It's not that simple," she said quietly. "You know how Mom is. She gets emotional." I nodded. "And you get theatrical. You love playing the part of the beloved daughter, the one in the picture frame, the one everyone adores." "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "But you didn't refuse it either," I replied. "You let it happen. And you didn't come looking for me when I disappeared. You only showed up when the system I built started to fail, when the cracks appeared, and you realized you had no idea how to fix them." She finally looked at me, her eyes welling up with tears, but I didn't soften. Not to be cruel, but because for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't the one who had to swallow my feelings to keep the peace. "You're mad that I left Mom and Dad in a lurch," I said, my voice unwavering, "but all I'm really doing is living up to their version of the truth, that I never helped. So now they can learn to manage without my help. And you can finally step up and do what everyone praises you for, being the one who loves them. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. She just stood there, a look of dawning horror on her face as she realized that some roles, once you accept them, come with actual responsibilities. A minute later, she turned and walked to the door. No final word, no slam door. She just left, stepping out into a world where, for the first time, she would have to pay her own way. I remained in the center of my living room, not relieved, not victorious, but not regretful either, just still. The kind of stillness that comes after you stop being the scaffolding for everyone else's life. I thought things would go quiet after that. I figured they'd retreat, lick their wounds, and spin some story to the neighbors that painted me as the villain. But then, on a Wednesday morning, a notification popped up from the Thorne Family Forever Facebook group. My finger clicked on it before my brain could stop it. My mother had posted a photo. It was a bright, sunny picture of the family in front of the Lake Chelan Lodge, all of them smiling. My parents, Maya, a few aunts, uncles, and cousins. And me? I wasn't there. There wasn't even an awkward gap where I might have been standing. I was completely gone. Just like I had been from the photo collage, the caption was classic mom, just sentimental enough to seem sweet to an outsider. Family is everything, even when some people forget that. It was a cold, clean cut. Below the post, the comments started rolling in. An aunt wrote, "So true. Family is where life begins and love never ends." A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years dropped a heart emoji. Someone else added, "Every family has a lost sheep. Love will wait for them to find their way home." I read every single one, not looking for validation, but for confirmation. And I found it. No one defended me. No one questioned the narrative. They all chose the easier story. I didn't comment. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't even use an angry emoji. Instead, I opened my laptop, not to argue, but to do what I do best: organize data. I spent the next hour digging up every digital receipt from the last 10 years. Bank statements, screenshots of wire transfers, confirmation emails from doctors' offices, utility bills, texts from Maya asking for money, tuition payment confirmations. I compiled them all into a single public post. No emotional caption, no call-outs, just the images. Each image was a transaction, a piece of my life that had been rendered invisible. At the very end, I added one line of text. Total contributions over 10 years, $152,450. No expectations, no demands, just no more. I set the post to public. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. They all knew. I posted it at 10:42 a.m. and closed my laptop at 10:45. I didn't refresh the page. I didn't wait for the fallout. I made lunch, cleaned my apartment, and watered my plants. All small, quiet acts of taking care of my own life. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing. The post had been shared. Relatives who had sat in silence at the reunion were now messaging me privately. "I had no idea you were doing all that, Rebecca." A cousin wrote, "I'm so sorry I didn't say anything that night." And my mother? Nothing. Not a word. Her post remained up, a monument to her version of reality. Then came a text from Maya. No punctuation, no emoji, just 4 cold, stark words. "We need to talk." I stared at the message, not because I was going to reply, but because I knew for the first time in her life, Maya wasn't reaching out because she wanted something from me. She was reaching out because the person holding everything together had finally let go, and she was watching it all start to crumble. I truly thought they wouldn't come back after that. But they did. Not with drama or accusations. Just 3 figures standing on my porch on a gray afternoon, looking like they'd just survived a long, hard winter with no heat. I saw them from the kitchen window. My mother was in the middle, looking smaller than I remembered, her face etched with exhaustion. Her old cardigan was wrinkled and shapeless. My father stood behind her, his shoulders hunched, and Maya stood to the side, a dark circle under each eye. The healing energy was gone. She just looked tired. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway, a human barrier. "I'm sorry," my mother said, her voice flat. "We were wrong. We shouldn't have said what we did. We shouldn't have let you walk away." My father just looked at his shoes. Maya said nothing, but for the first time, she looked at me without a costume. I didn't offer forgiveness. I didn't say it was okay. I just looked at them and said, "I'm not the daughter who endures things anymore. I'm not the one who keeps everything from falling apart in silence." My mother hesitated, maybe waiting for me to soften, but I didn't. Maya lowered her head. "I moved out," she said quietly. "I have my own place now. It's tiny, but I'm managing." A month later, a relative sent me a picture of the for sale sign on my parents' front lawn, the house I had quietly paid the mortgage on for a decade. They sold it for less than it was worth because they needed the money fast, downsizing to a small rental on the outskirts of the city. Maya was still at her studio apartment, working at a coffee shop and occasionally posting photos of her pottery, but the captions were short and factual now. No more hashtags about gratitude. I didn't unfollow her, but I didn't engage. I just saw it and I let it be. And me? I just kept living. No dramatic reunion, no tearful reconciliation. I just lived my life, free from the weight of their expectations. The price of my family's comfort had been my own erasure. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not with them either. I tell this story not for pity, but in case someone out there needs to hear their own voice in it, the voice of quiet sacrifice, of the role you never chose. I stepped out of the frame, and this time, I left nothing of myself behind for them to keep. I used to believe that silence was the most dignified way to deal with the cracks in my family, but if you stay silent for too long, people start to believe you don't have a voice at all. The thing that hurt the most wasn't my mother's sentence. It was the silence of the 48 other people who heard it and thought it was perfectly reasonable. My silence had become my identity, the invisible, agreeable, reliable one. I used to tell myself, if I don't help, who will? I thought some people were just born to sacrifice while others were born to be loved. But I finally understood that if the only way you're allowed to be part of a family is by constantly paying for your spot, that isn't family, it's a transaction. And no amount of shared history can turn exploitation into love. Real love isn't a monthly payment. It's not being the understanding one who never complains. It's being seen, being acknowledged, without having to hold the entire world up on your shoulders. I don't need their apologies anymore. I don't need them to rewrite history. For the first time in my life, I have something that feels more valuable than any family portrait. The quiet peace that comes from owing nothing to the people I once tried so desperately to hold together. I tell this story so that if you are stuck playing a part you never auditioned for, giving pieces of yourself away just to keep a fragile structure from collapsing, you know that you are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not too sensitive. You are just someone who has finally endured enough. Share this story if you've ever been the one holding it all together in silence. You don't have to explain why. And if you've never felt this way, maybe take a moment to ask yourself, is there someone in your life quietly keeping everything from falling apart for you? If you want to hear more stories like this, the real ones, the ones that don't fit on a greeting card, subscribe to the Family Ashes channel. Because here, we don't tell fairy tales. We tell the truth that sometimes only one person in the family ever dares to say out loud. End of story.